If you're new in town or just new to this whole podcast thing, you're tuning in to Law by Night, the podcast that discusses all things vampiric with no fear of breaching the Masquerade. In this episode, we shall unravel the mysteries surrounding Obtenebration and Abyss Mysticism, the disciplines that allow manipulation of the darkness, as well as the practitioners of the Road of Night who study the Abyss. A problematic mortal writer once said, "The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown." Those are some particularly wise words, child, aren't they? What we don't know scares us. Simple, yet deeply profound. So many of our problems, both mundane and supernatural, stem from this one principle. I'm sure I don't need to tell you, of all people, this. But what do kindred fear the most? Now, the vast majority would fear the naked flame or the sunlight, both having this nasty effect of turning us to ash, presuming, of course, we're not given the chance to frenzy and flee first. We cannot help it. It is in our very nature, forcing us to stalk our prey, be it kine or kindred, in the pale moonlight and murky street lamps. You, however, are not most Cainites. Neither am I, for that matter. You know from a previous conversation we had some time ago that all kindred should fear what is most familiar to them. The darkness. It is no safe bosom buddy, especially when there are a select few who can use it to choke the very essence out of you or engulf your frame in a cold blanket of the night, leaving you positively sane afterwards. I am, of course, talking about the unique gift of the La Sombra, Obtenebration. But this isn't a conversation about the turncoats, at least not on them alone. As more and more La Sombra enter our Camarilla domains, it won't be long until there is a civil war on our hands, if you want my honest opinion. I believe it is in your best interest to have some knowledge on their wicked command of this supernatural darkness when the inevitable does occur. It would also aid you should you test the patience of a magister, and believe me, child, you are going to need every bit of help you can get. Obtenebration, in the simplest of definitions, is the act of darkening, the state of being darkened. That, of course, is merely the mortal definition of the word. It is neither helpful nor accurate. Yes, some members of the Night Clan are capable of coating themselves and others in this darkness whilst being able to see through their own powers, so in that particular circumstance, that description is very accurate. That definition leaves plenty of questions, however, the main one being, where does this power come from? How are the La Sombra and their subsequent bloodlines are able to control the darkness itself? Well, very, very short answer. No one knows. Allow me to extrapolate. Many La Sombra have disagreed about the nature of the source of their power for well over a millennia. When asked, most La Sombra will tell you that it is merely shadows they control, a nonchalant attitude I will address later on. Others may say it is a manipulation of their soul, coaxing it tangibly outwards, which provides a more spiritual point of origin. This may seem a bit out of place with tonight's youth, but it is an attitude that dates back hundreds of years. You see, during the medieval period, an era we literally call the Dark Ages, many La Sombra elders of the time would tell that the darkness they wield is a primal entity, equal and opposite to the force of creation that bears the world into being. These keepers would call the entity Ahriman, a dark force of Zoroastrianism, one of the world's oldest continuously practiced religions, based on the teachings of the Iranian-speaking prophet Zoroaster. A slightly less profound variation of this is to believe that Obtenebration originates from other evil demons and gods. To that end, the Liabon, Africa's kindred, believe these shadow-manipulating kindred are soul thieves, which I have spoken to you in great detail before. The Ramanga, the Liabon descended from La Sombra, believe that their power came from a dark spirit who only beckoned to the call of their progenitor after countless diabolical sacrifices. You will remember that they call Obtenebration a different name, but you can just refer to your notes on the Ramanga and Zidundu for a reminder. The La Sombra are not the only ones to speculate on its origins, however. I myself have researched the discipline, or rather, I have made notes after observations on others using the discipline, for I am no wielder of Obtenebration. The most notable of these theories is one that belongs to the Shadow Crusade of the Talmehera, or as they prefer to call themselves, the Eliud. The Shadow Crusade are not a La Sombra faction within the sect, for the La Sombra are not welcome in the Talmehera for reasons I explained some time ago. The Eliud are a group of Cainites who believe that vicissitude is an alien parasite, which you are more than welcome to believe if you wish, but I will not entertain such unadulterated shit here. Anyway, the Shadow Crusade have an interesting hypothesis on where this extraordinary power comes from. They believe Obtenebration came from an individual by the name of Azanael, who gave La Sombra parts of its unholy powers in order to manifest in this world. His name is not terribly well known, mostly because he is a powerful Bari Methuselah, founder of the Angelus Aether, the La Sombra Bali bloodline, which now makes the Shadow Crusade's theory far more intimidating. The Shadow Crusade believe he is not of the Bali clan, but a second-generation vampire who has been partially diabolized by one or more of the antediluvians, but yet somehow retreating as a disembodied demonic spectre to another plane of existence. It is here where the Talmehera idea begins to fall apart a little. To reiterate, the exact nature of this discipline is unknown even among its greatest masters, and it has been a subject of religious, philosophical, and metaphysical debate among vampires for well over a millennia. But which of these theories I present to you is the one that I believe? Well, truth be told, mostly none of them. I do believe there is some grander entity at work, as nothing exists truly in a void. On that note, I believe that most of the power the La Sombra calls upon originates from the Abyss, something that I have touched upon before many a time. I can imagine that many a neonate within the clan sees it no more than a metaphorical conceptualization of their mastery of the darkness. I can assure you with undeniable certainty that the Abyss is a literal place, an endless void of eternal night. The chilling darkness of the realm extends beyond the visual and physical and into the spiritual. Long-time habitation of the Abyss is dangerous even to the Cainite psyche. Oh, you heard that right, child. Certain La Sombra elders, primarily the Friends of the Night, use the Abyss as a meeting place. Now, I know the thoughts that run rampant in your mind, child. Why would anyone want to gather in such an inhospitable place, let alone tamper with it? Well, nobody's sane, that's for certain, which comes to my next point. Remember I said that most modern La Sombra see the shadow manipulation as nothing more than that? It is a tool and a gift from their founder that ultimately serves as one power among many. The Abyss Mystics of the clan would tell you differently. These are the ones who force the narrative that Obtenebration originates from another realm found at the center of creation. It is said that the Lord Aladdin Fex was among the first to bring this peculiar blood sorcery to the clan. In the Dark Ages, Fex, in his role as courtier and spy, was said to use his body as a weapon. Most famously, he devised a way for the Abyss to exist in his body, allowing him to sacrifice anyone who breached it. The La Sombra prized him as a merciless killer and true magister until he became an anti-tribute, which I suppose is not too relevant tonight, though. Anyway, Montano, the favoured child of La Sombra itself, was said to dip his toes with these dark arts also, which is said to have pleased his sire. But one does not simply casually dabble with Abyss mysticism, you obsess over it. The Shadowed, as they occasionally call themselves, will spend nights just staring into starlit seas, gazing at the blackened sky and scanning shadows in the tiniest of cracks. They search for darkened secrets, they speak to the darkness around them, hearing the many voices in response. It is easy to mistake such kindred as toreadors captivated by some dark beauty, but the La Sombra know better. Abyss mystics are respected as much as they are distanced by the rest of the clan. The La Sombra smile on all that adapt to the darkness, but the Shadowed take this a step further, willing to use the darkness as much as it uses them. The Keoseed have also been known to practice Abyss mysticism, but neither they nor their older cousins exchange secrets, especially when one of these bloodlines has associations of the Talmehera. There are thus fewer Abyss mysticism rituals than other blood sorcery paths. Abyss mysticism differs also in that it requires one's understanding and practice on Obtenebration rather than one's application on magic. It is understandably far more dangerous, with each ritual causing some nasty effects to the caster. For example, I was in conversation with an eclectic female British La Sombra, who I'm still fairly certain is a Malkavian. Anyway, she described to me a ritual called Calling the Hungry Shade, which summoned a human-sized abyssal soldier, only to have it attack attack her. A simpler ritual allows one to be able to see in the dark, but there's the catch that their eyes are a sickly black, like a gangrel's would turn red. Sometimes this blackening of eyes is permanent. I see that you are puzzled, or are you horrified? I can't always tell with you. Now, if it is the last emotion, good, we are getting somewhere. If it is the former, allow me to explain. I may have stated previously that the Shroud occupies the same space as the Abyss, for they are one of the same. This is correct, but I feel hard-pressed to believe that many La Sombre can easily summon ghosts, and those of the Hakata bloodlines can manipulate the darkness. Oh, that wasn't the confusion? Oh, beg your pardon. You didn't realize that there were creatures other than ghosts in the Abyss? With all due respect, you're a bloody fool. Demons exist there for one thing, but let us return back to the Abyss Mystics. Yes, other denizens of the Abyss do exist there. Frightening monstrosities exist in the void that many a shadow has attempted to control or let loose on unsuspecting trespassers. The Abyss Mystics have attempted to control their own corner of the void via the creation of an obulete, usually deep within the domain of another. They are long stretches of suffocating darkness that can be small as cupboards or large labyrinthian complexes with multiple structures. I heard one story too many during our dark ages regarding literally lost searching parties that thought it was a good idea to explore them. There were no survivors. If its denizens didn't kill them, it was the obulete itself. One of these creatures is the Blatherskite, a whip-thin entity comprising of limbs that drag its many toes and fingers across the ground. It is said to have no torso or head, but only a trunk and stumps made of tangled shadows from which the limbs flail. It only communicates in chirps and noises that I can only describe as belches, which is remarkable when you consider it lacks any orifices. These noises are said to increase in volume and pitch as it approaches something with blood. Providing the blood-bearing creatures in proximity, it will lash and choke at the poor soul until the blood is totally squeezed out of it, like an orange or some other delicate fruit. There are structures galore inside of the Abyss, as well as rancid pools of blood, according to the notes I've collected over the years at least, but I wouldn't try drinking it or anything else for that matter. The infertile bezoars make their homes in such disgusting sources, becoming a horrid tumour in the heart of the canite. It grows and grows, burrowing into the rib cage as it tears the heart into a hollow husk. I believe it is fair to assume it sends the kindred into torpor when this occurs. From what I can gather, they are slug-like in appearance, but there appears to be some speculation amongst mystics. The umbriferous man is also something of great conjecture amongst the mystics also, mainly whether it is one shadow coalescing to form one man or many men. The umbriferous man or men is a tall, yellow-eyed figure in many a rag that is barely visible through such layers. It will treat all kindly, providing it is not attacked or provoked. It is no adept fighter, I'm told, but those who slay it will be awarded thousands of silver coins, but you must not take them. You will vanish soon after. It is said that it will speak to visitors with hundreds of languages at once, clear in tone despite the many languages and clothes. It will pose riddles with rewards for those who solve them. Failure to do so will do nothing. At first. Eventually, they will claim those to the shadows. There will be no evidence of your departure, besides shadows in the corners of the room you slept that day. It won't surprise you that said shadows are permanent. They are not the only humanoid-looking creatures to exist in Obuletes and the Abyss. The Menacious Legion are black, spined, armoured, nebulous knights that never leave their headless obsidian steeds as they wield swords and lances of abyssal shadow. Poetry aside, some assume they are one with their horses, as the Menacious Legion serve as watchdogs and hunters. Both I and this legion have a mastery in dead languages in common, and the will to inflict torture. The difference being is that is the only thing the legion focuses on. They are not one for conversation. As for the steeds themselves, the lack of head is perhaps the most normal thing about them. They have flickering shadowy tendrils for legs and ropey tentacles of black for bodies that resemble horse-sized wood lice. Presuming you can't hear them first, you'll probably smell them. They reek of piss. Apparently. Through this small window into the veil, I hope you can see why most are unable to not only fathom Abyss Mysticism and the potential horror that is the Abyss. The use of Obtenebration eats away at your humanity, staining it in the process. You deal with otherworldly entities that are vanquished by flame. What is humane about anything I've just told you? The correct answer is nothing. Humanity and concepts like right or wrong have very little use to those who study the mysteries of an outer darkness. As such, humane paths like the path of humanity and heaven will just fall apart dealing with the abhorrent nature that is the abyss, so one must turn to a road or path of enlightenment. During the Dark Ages, such Canaanites would have been shown the road of the abyss, which would later become the path of night, as it was adopted by the Sabbat, or rather, certain secretive Sabbat La Sombre took it, as we already discussed its secretive culture. It may not surprise you that, given everything that we've discussed tonight, that the Road of Abyss was a version of the Road of Bones, created by the Abyss mystics of Clan La Sombre. It was a necessity for them, as they immersed themselves in the undying study of a force transcending and ultimately opposing all light and life. It is a profoundly religious statement. Think about it. When God said, "Let there be light," it was into the abyss that his radiance reached, yes, but God did not create the abyss. It was there way before him. This means that this cult, the Abyss Mystics, for that is what they truly are, tap into a power more ancient and terrible than God. Now, does this make this power evil? A clever git would question the user's intent and ask for context. But such low-brow intellect knows not the presence of vampires, creatures suspended above life and death. We are the nocturnally damned, emissaries and harbingers of ultimate evil. To the Abyss Mystics and to the practitioners of the Path of Night, called Nihilists, revel in this philosophy, accepting their nature as they play with the all-consuming void, most commonly known as hell. To accept this as one's nature and duty as monster is the only way one can free themselves from the shackles tying them down, freeing yourself from the beast. Nihilists differ somewhat from the Road of Abyss by a noticeable amount. They believe that Earth is some purgatory acting as Hell's agents. They inflict evil not by choice, but by sacred obligation. Every thought, word, and deed is analysed greatly, only for them to work out how much pain it can deliver, making sure no one is being left unscathed by their taint. The weak are destroyed, the strong also, or corrupted. Those that are too strong must also feel the corruption of the Nihilist, or be destroyed. Failing that, they must be scared in passing. In short, they are true cancers of the earth, but that is their duty to uphold, to stave away the beast. What atrocities could the beast do to champion their creative use of their disciplines? The beast can only do less than what a composed nihilist can do. Followers of the Path of Night thus serve both a higher and lower purpose. Of course, not all believe they are serving some dark overlord. Many just view themselves as agents, an empty void, breaking down, focusing on its spiritual and physical properties. So we have returned to the question of what is evil, for it is just as vague as the nihilists. They do not appear to be truly nihilistic now, do they? Therefore, the Path of Night is not a La Sombre exclusive path. It is open to those who wish to question the powers of morality and espouse the power of evil, whatever that may be, encouraging all around them to accept their inner darkness and to spread the corruption. There is no one true way to practice this path's tenets, which I've peppered throughout tonight's discussion. One must do evil as they see fit. Just like with most fiends of our kind, you will have more power cultivating evil than just flexing your disciplines willy-nilly. True power is cyclical, as is evil. This is why history repeats itself, child. Of course, I shan't deny the mindless rampaging doesn't have its place, but one must understand the how before the why, and atrocity for its own sake is indulged. To an extent. You are beginning to develop, child. I can see by your face you're beginning to understand how everything is connecting together, which is almost a sad thing to see, given how attached to your humanity you are. The Abyss, and all that spawns from it, are great, terrible unknown entities that gnaws at the very heart of the underworld. The Void is a great evil, the embodiment of the forces that tears at the great order of things. It is present in the light and lurks in every shadow. Ghosts fear its hunger, and demons fail to comprehend its magnificence. The La Sombre and its many bloodlines know it is the source of their horrifying power. For most La Sombre, Obtenebration is enough. For the Abyss Mystics, it is only the beginning. They know the Abyss is not a static force. It is a life force that flows within all things. To them, it is actually a good thing, a tool they use to revere God. The Abyss is not something to be worshipped. Heed my warning, neonate. Stay away from this flowing dark matter, child. The Abyss is evil in its truest form. To be kept updated, follow the Law by Night VTM Twitter and Instagram pages to find out when we will upload each episode. You can also find out by subscribing to the YouTube channel and clicking on the little bell, as you'll be immediately notified when the latest episode is live. Until next time, farewell.